Hello, this is East Coast DNA. It's a music news podcast. My name's Andrew, and with me is my brother,
Darcy Walsh. Hello, everyone.
We're on episode 3 now. I think things are coming together okay. Last week the audio sounded better than what we had the first episode, so we're starting to get some progress and sound a little more pro.
Yeah, starting to get a little bit of a layout to our format there too, so it's all coming together.
We're dealing with some really cold weather this week in Nova Scotia. Waiting for that to warm up soon.
Yeah.
Besides the cold weather, we have cold moods because everything's getting canceled still.
It's been the first time since the summer where I don't mind staying in.
Yeah.
With the COVID numbers and the cold weather, I'm happy to do a staying indoors.
And we're kind of forced to stay in because there's nothing really to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Like we spoke there, the Offspring concert was supposed to be next week. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, Offspring was scheduled to kick off their Let the Bad Times Roll tour with Simple Plan on the East Coast with Moncton and Halifax dates scheduled for next week. Recently announced that they're going to have to cancel that one. And this one is actually a cancellation, not a postponement. So it's a little disappointing.
I think that was already postponed once, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was something that I was actually a little surprised it was still in the books as long as it was, because it was a postponement before, but I guess they were holding out just to see if we could do things. And a couple months ago, we probably would have thought that was feasible. I prefer to hear the postponements because it gives me a little bit of hope that at least I'll still get to see these bands in a few months' time, which may not be reasonable, but I'm trying to be optimistic.
When they announced that tour, they did a little video, a simple plan on how to be Canadian.
Yeah, Canada School.
Have that in our YouTube playlist this week, too. Just kind of a little thing. Probably at the end, do you think? It'll be something to give a little giggle anyway.
Yeah, and I'll throw in the newer singles from Simple Plan and Offspring. The Offspring actually did have a couple singles already off the album from last year, but I put their more recent one in the playlist, so it's something for people to go check out for sure.
And something not COVID cancellation related, something that was going to go in spite of it, back to weather. What happened there last weekend?
I had shared one of Andre Petitpas' solo performances that was scheduled and had made the comment about how he just doesn't seem to stop, because even with the restrictions, he's scaled back to doing some solo performances. He's still able to keep himself booked for some gigs, but the one specific one that I happened to pick to share ended up being canceled due to our recent snowy weather. It shut down pretty much everything that was happening. Just most people didn't notice things were canceled because there wasn't as many things happening.
Yeah, I was working that day. It was not good traveling, not good weather to be out in, so it's probably best that they did cancel that, I would say.
I think that was at Candid Brewing, and he's rescheduled that one, actually, maybe. Even though it was a cancellation for the night, I think he is going to circle back and do a performance there.
Yeah, he'll do everything he can to get back there, I'm sure. He seems to not like sitting still for long.
For our playlist there, too, we keep circling back, mentioning him. He's currently living in Glasgow, so I actually run into him here and there, and he's quite frequent on social media, so he always crosses paths when we're doing our social media. So I wanted to throw another song in there for him too, just give a little bit of representation on our playlist. And we had already thrown a couple of his singles in there, so I went this time into the COVID Cuts EP that they did during the pandemic. They were doing covers. The song I picked off that EP was actually one they did with another East Coast musician that's got some infamy out there. I'm sure many people are familiar with Ashley McIsaac. So they did a cover of the Romantics' Talking in Your Sleep, and I added that to the episode companion playlist. It's a little bit of a fair stretch, but I had mentioned in a couple of the other episodes too that we had thrown some other bands in like Billy Talent and Cancer Bats, even though they're not truly East Coast bands due to relations and coming through the area. Years ago, the White Stripes did a little tour up here in Canada, and they did a lot of East Coast small towns, and they were doing a little bit of family tree research in the roots, I guess. Back from all that, it was revealed that Ashley McIsaac and Jack White are somehow related, some kind of distant cousin relationship.
Yeah, when I saw Jack White in Halifax, he did Barrett's Privateers, and he sang every single verse. And I don't know a maritimer that knows every single verse of Barrett's Privateers. They sing the first one, then they sing the chorus, and then they sip their beer for the second verse, and then they sing the chorus. He just stood there, middle of the stage, eyes closed, and just sang every single word of that song. He had the whole thing memorized. And the thing about that show was that there was no phones allowed. It was one of the ones where they locked your phone away.
Yeah, that's one I was disappointed I missed because I've never seen anything from it.
Yeah, and it was such a good show, but I think it was also a good show because it was just like back in the day when you just went and enjoyed the show and didn't worry about capturing anything. So it's all in our memories, and there's nothing out there to remember it by besides our memories, which I don't really mind.
I think at the time I was working in Edmonton, so I wasn't able to make it. I do remember I was working on that project where I was traveling back and forth at the time. So one reason or other, I never made it. A little disappointed. But even though he's not from here, I guess we'll consider him one of our honorary East Coast musicians. And he had a new single out this week, and I know that you're a big fan yourself. So I threw Love is Selfish on the playlist as well.
Yeah, these are 2 albums come out this year, I guess.
Yeah, it's something to look forward to. It's always good music.
And there's another show. It was actually last weekend, but it got postponed until August 21st. Martha Wainwright from Montreal was going to play the stage on St. Andrews, and that's been postponed.
Once August 21st comes around, that thing goes through, and hopefully this summer is just a problem with deciding which shows to go to, because it seems like we're getting more postponements than we are cancellations.
Yeah, I think we know, like, this is wave 5 out of 2 years, so we know that there will be a good moment here fairly soon. I think we're on our way out of it.
And I mean, I'm no scientist by any means, but when you look at the waves and everything, I think most people are kind of forecasting that things suck right now, but where we go up and down, even if they go back up again in the future, there should be a point where they go down late spring, early summer. So
yeah, I think the summer should be probably good for getting
and that will open all the outdoor venues too.
Exactly.
Like, there's a lot of options. People are starting to get into a little bit more options on recording stuff at home and doing live streams and all that. So that's fine for now, but it will be nice. We'll all be ready to get out and at least breathe some air and watch someone perform once the weather lets up too.
And as far as people back in Pictou County, I say back in, I'm not there. Darcy's still there. I'm elsewhere. But the commune reopened fairly recently, and I was excited about that because that was kind of the spot I enjoyed going. They had great whiskey sours and always had a good band playing. But they had to close the doors for the next little while just to keep everyone safe. It probably wasn't worth it to stay open at this point. So
a little bit of business model restructuring might be needed to survive in this new world for a lot of these smaller businesses too, right?
Yeah. And they had indoor dining and stuff, and
it's too hard.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful spot, and I look forward to see what they're going to be doing in the future.
Yeah, they'll be open again. They seem to be ready to go.
Oh, they're very supportive of the music community too. So, I mean, it's a shame to see a venue like that disappear when they didn't even really have a fair shot this time around.
Yeah. The Trews. What do we know about the Trews?
Yeah, the Trews. Now, this is a little bit different than what we've seen with some of the other people. And maybe their approach is the way some people will have to look at things in the future. But instead of canceling their tour that was about to kick off, they decided instead to postpone the Western leg because that was the part that was supposed to start sooner rather than later. But going down the schedule, the later dates on the Eastern side, they're keeping. And then they're going to circle back to postpone dates for the rest of them. So I think there's a couple random ones, and I'm sure anyone that's listening that's a Trews fan that was planning on going to the show knows the particulars, but there's a couple ones that they were not able to postpone, and they might add to backfill it. So it's just something to keep an eye on. They have a couple months to rest up and prepare for it, and hopefully when that time comes around that they're going to kick it off and start traveling, we're in a position where they can just keep on going. And they did have a couple other bands that were traveling with them. I don't know the connection to the Trews, but I wanted to add them onto our playlist this week too. Just I always like when bands, now the Trews are originally here from Antigonish, but they're in Ontario, I think now. So when bands come from away, whether they're originally from here or not, the bigger the band, the more I want to see who's opening for them, because it's a good chance to see bands that may not otherwise, it might not be financially feasible for them to travel to Nova Scotia and play a small show.
Yeah.
So it's good to see them come in, and I mean, it's great for the bands to get exposure, obviously, but it's great for a fan to be able to see bands that you wouldn't normally be able to. So I tagged these guys on there too, just to check them out. They're pretty good songs.
Yeah, I listened there, and I went back to check my screen to see who I was listening to. So
Yes, exactly. And for the Trues, I put their newer single on there too, because they're a band that their singles get played a lot.
Yeah.
I always like to hear something fresh from them when I dig into the Trues.
So that's all we really have that we made note of for cancellations. I'd rather start off with stuff that's happening instead of stuff that's not happening, but that's the world we're in right now.
Yeah, we're really looking for this to be more of a celebration of East Coast music than pointing out all of our current woes. Trying to be optimistic.
In the news area, stuff that is happening, we do have a band, like you just mentioned, based out of Toronto now on paper, but they are from Nova Scotia. We both remember them when they're up and coming when we were teenagers. I don't even want to guess what year that was. But Sloan has their 13th studio album coming out.
So yeah, they're I think in the studio now. So that should be out later this year. That will be exciting to hear, as always. By coincidence, this week I was digging through some old stuff that I had packed. I just moved into an apartment few months ago, and I'm down to a few boxes of things that I set aside that weren't pots and pans or food or clothes, so the other keepsake type stuff. And a few of the things tucked in there were actually dating back to the era of how long ago that was.
Yeah.
Pulled out a few Jail 45s that I had in their old CDs. I had an old concert poster. And actually, there was an issue of Coast Weekly, like entertainment paper in Halifax. And everybody around this area would know what the Coast is. People are familiar with it. It's a staple.
I'm not sure if the box I normally get the Coast out of wasn't there last time I checked in Halifax. So I don't know if just that one got moved or if...
I check out the website once in a while, but I can't honestly say that it's been a few months, but I think I paper copy in recent history, but it wouldn't have been months, maybe a couple of years now.
I'll take a closer look when I'm through the city.
Yeah, the copy I dug out, though, was I saved it because Jail was on the cover. As I mentioned in one of the earlier podcasts where I was fascinated by scenes, I was alive at the time, but I was quite young. Mm-hmm. So when Sloan hit the scene, as much as everyone at the time, the Seattle scene was huge, and Halifax was becoming known as the next Seattle.
Yeah.
Never really happened, but Sloan was one of those bands, and Jail actually had a member that started playing with them and then spun off. They had this own little thing, Hardship Post, as another tie-in band there too. But that issue of the Coast that I kept, it was because Jail was on the cover and I was a big fan. When I took it out, I was a little embarrassed to see on the front, it was the 1-year anniversary issue.
Oh, really?
That's how old that paper is that the Coast had only been in operation for 1 year at the time of publication.
That's amazing.
Actually, the guys on Instagram, I'm not sure who the people are that run it, but the Halifax Music Archive Instagram account, I sent them pictures of a concert poster from that era as well, and the magazine. And the poster was Jail performing at the Birdland. So for anyone that doesn't know what the Birdland is, the Marquee is a popular venue in the city of Halifax, and years ago, it would have been the Birdland.
Yeah.
So it's like the grandfather of the Marquee and the Seahorse.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of music posters, this isn't really East Coast related, but it's kind of been in everyone's face this week. There's a festival, When We Were Young. It's getting some headlines because it seems like a lot of the bands didn't know they were on the bill until the poster got released with 65 bands on it. All well known, popular 15 years ago.
It's definitely representation, like heavy representation of an era of music.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know yourself, like what you said, our musical interests kind of went in their own paths after high school. There's a lot of overlap, but I'm not sure how many of those bands would have been bands that you were listening to. But for myself, at the time that those were the popular bands, I was running a side business selling music merchandise, T-shirts and patches and pins, and those were the bands that were popular at the time.
Yeah. I
definitely know a good chunk of those bands. Maybe a quarter of them would have been regular in my playlist at the time.
Yeah.
Like on an old iPod or something. But yeah, when I first saw that, I thought it was fake.
And then I saw an Instagram post where some of the bands were like, apparently we were playing this show, and they had no idea.
Yeah, so there's red flags everywhere. Live Nation had some historical problems with their last event. Now it seems like they're trying to pull off another one. It's been compared to the Fire Festival already.
I think they're trying to pay their lawyer fees from the event that happened last fall.
I mean, if they pull it off, it's going to be quite the spectacle. I am concerned with some of the red flags around COVID numbers and stuff as well. That's not that far off for that many people to be together. But I did see with the public backlash for safety concerns that they've decided to extend it into a 2-day event.
But the same set 2 days. They're splitting it, so if you got tickets, you might go Saturday, you might go Sunday.
Yeah.
And even some of the bands, though, there's 20-minute sets, but it's not like 20 minutes and then 15 minutes for a breakdown. It's 20 minutes, and then the next band starts right away, and the next band starts. And that goes for a couple hours at the beginning of each day. I just couldn't imagine a setup and breakdown of 20 minutes to play, 2 songs? And have to get off the stage again.
I'm trying to remember what year Somersault came to Halifax, the Our Lady Peace tour where they brought Perfect Circle and Smashing Pumpkins.
Oh, like 2001.
Foo Fighters. Yeah. Back then, there was a lot of shows in the city, like festivals with a lot of bands coming through. Mm-hmm. So I could have this mixed up with another event, Snow Jam and all of the Canada Day concerts, everything. But there was one, and I think it might have been the Somersault one. I was always somebody that was geared up and ready to go because, like I said, I like to see the opening acts. Mm-hmm. But when you're of a certain age, it's hard to get anyone to go early when they want to have a drink before they go.
Yeah.
So I was still very early going to that show and thought that everything would be fine. But by the time I got in the doors, I'd only missed an hour and a half maybe. And Finger 11 and Sum 41 had already played their full sets and somebody else. And like I said, like an hour and a half, 2 hours tops by the time I was in and sitting down. And I could hear stuff as I was going through the gates and waiting in line. But yeah, that doesn't even make any sense to get somebody to play a 15-20 minute set at a big show like that. You're not going to remember them.
No, and they don't have time to play the full 20 minutes. They'll be playing like 10 to 15 minutes and that'll be it.
Something like that works well with like an award show where you're going to showcase a song or two.
Yeah.
It works well because it's framed in with other stuff and people understand what's going on. But I don't know, maybe somebody's going to MC the whole event and maybe they're going to pull it off and it's going to be the Woodstock of the next generation. Who knows?
And something else in music news this week, someone that always pulls it off, Foo Fighters Studio 666 trailer came out. Not really a whole lot to talk about there, but if anyone hasn't seen it yet, go check it out. There's actually a movie based on the Foo Fighters recording in a haunted house, it seems like. Dave Grohl gets possessed. It's right up Foo Fighters' alley.
But now this is a full movie too. Like I saw the trailer, but it's not just a comic spoof of doing a trailer. It's an actual movie that they have coming out later in the year.
So if they couldn't make money touring, they're making money releasing a movie.
Yeah, so there's a note for any of you musicians saying that you don't have anywhere to perform. You just become an actor now. All you got to do is write a script and find a director and some cameraman and audio engineers. And you'll be fine.
We had a few things from last week we mentioned. We want to elaborate or correct on.
Yes.
Start off some of those.
One little thing I was embarrassed by that tied in with a news story from earlier today, actually. Christina Martin, I kind of stumbled on who she was when I was mentioning her podcast. I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about her, but I am familiar with who she is today. Yeah. And her latest single, I did know it, but that Stay With Me had actually been number 1 on the East Coast Countdown just previous to our last recording, and then had the second week just after that recording. So I was a little embarrassed that I didn't even know that to mention it.
Yeah.
And now, as of the recording today, there was no episode this week because they had some technical difficulty or something. So I guess technically it's 3 weeks running. I don't know long term if they count that for her, but we consider it 3 weeks running. So she's the longest running number 1 East Coast Countdown artist of 2022. Good for you, Christina. Now, unfortunately, the announcement this morning was her European tour had to be canceled due to COVID. But the good news is she has that Chat with Heart podcast. So I've been listening to it, and I probably will keep listening to it. It's focused more as like a chat. Anyone that's looking for something to listen to. When we talked about it before, it was just new, but I've listened to a couple episodes now, and it seems to have a message of hope. Hopefully it'll help some people through some of these times.
So, and Jody Upshaw, we had some news on her as well.
Yeah, I had the information last week, but I didn't mention it at the time because she was getting press like every 20 minutes there was something on TV or a new news media outlet online or somebody sharing something on social media. The big story was that a couple Nova Scotia artists were featured in the music for season 2 first episode of Zendaya's new show Euphoria, which is doing quite well, I think internationally, at least in North America. Jody Upshaw was one of those 2 artists. So she was getting a lot of press from her track from 2018, Straight Shooter. For our playlist this week, I wanted to actually put in, she had a song that she was promoting at Music Week, and I briefly met her. She came in and did a little shout out on Instagram, and it was another song that was also produced by Classified called Evil, so I threw that on our playlist for this week. And I also wanted to put in the other Nova Scotia artist that was featured in that same episode, Thrilla from Dartmouth. It's not an artist I'm really familiar with, but the track Mr. Bang Bada Boom is very catchy, and I've probably listened to it about a dozen times in the last 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, it's a good tune, eh?
When you do go to listen to the playlist companion for this, I tried to group some of the artists together. We're trying not to be genre specific, but when you're listening to music, you need at least some kind of tempo or something to pull them all together.
Yeah. We're going to talk about some new music that came out this week or came out last week or is coming out next week in a little bit, but we're going to take a break first and listen to Alkali by Pillow Fite. They are a band that we spoke to in an interview back in October at the Nova Scotia Music Week.
Mm-hmm.
Art Ross and Aaron Green, they're a duo. They have some good tunes out there. This song actually has a really good music video you can find on YouTube as well. But for now, this is Alkali by Pillow Fite. Welcome back from the break. Once again, that was Pillow Fite. Hope you enjoyed it. Check out their other music. Keep an ear open for them, and we'll definitely be talking about them again in the future, I'm sure. Another name that everyone listening most likely knows is Matt Anderson. And he has a new single that was co-written with Tara Spencer, who we spoke about doing the New Year's show, and that came out last week. The song is called The Other Side of Goodbye. It's kind of an acoustic blues song. When I first heard it, I got goosebumps. He has a powerful, powerful voice.
Yeah, that man's voice is incredible. I do, if anyone were to look through my music collection, it's quite varied, but there's a lot of female artists. A few people have commented on it before, especially because a lot of the female artists I have are not particularly mainstream or super well known.
Yeah.
It's the vocals, like you had mentioned in one of our earlier ones about me introducing you to a little bit of Soundgarden and Led Zeppelin. Those are two very feminine singers as far as their vocal range. It just comes down to the vocals. That's what I like. But I had mentioned it earlier too with Awoke when we did his interview too, like just piercing vocals. And this is another one, like you say, like as soon as you hear that intro to that song, you're like, oh man, I got to stop what I'm doing and pay attention to this song for a minute. Like I have one of his CDs autographed here in the background. It would be somebody I'd like to get out and see live sometime. And it's somebody that can play by himself. So it's actually feasible that it might be in the near future. Like he might be able to do one of the smaller shows.
He's been in the East Coast scene for a while, and he has international reach as well. I have a friend that he helped him record his EP probably 10 years ago.
Oh, okay. And that's the problem with him playing a smaller show, is that you wouldn't be able to, so many people would want to go to it.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to keep the numbers low enough. You'd almost have to have him come back every night for a week or something.
So what else new do we have out there for music this week?
We've been using Instagram to our advantage as far as finding new things. One band that kept floating back up was Columns of Clouds. So I went back and listened to their 2021 releases, which I quite liked. You can get Fear of Rejection. You can buy that now over in Bandcamp. They had a single out not too long ago, back in the fall, Survive. Quite a catchy song. I actually really liked that one. And I was excited to see that they were working on a new single. I thought it was scheduled to come like in a week's time. Maybe that is for sale in a week's time, like another Bandcamp release. But I was able to actually find the single on Spotify and YouTube. They have a lyric video on YouTube. So I've added their new song onto both of our playlists there as well. So that band is 3-piece modern rock group out of Halifax, Nova Scotia. And we'll be sure to keep an eye on things to come from them as well.
Perfect.
Not to hog the microphone here, but Michael S. Ryan had released a book with his wife, Christian, last year, sitting here beside me as well. Story, like anecdotal, comedic stories, them traveling around the world. It's really interesting. I'm really looking forward to finishing that. Back, I don't know when it would have been, December maybe? They were doing some promos, and they did some in-house events, some book signings, and a couple performances. And Kara and I actually went for a date night up there, and they had us right in their house. Mike and Bruce played Town Hero songs while Christian painted.
Oh, perfect.
It was quite interesting. So for his last solo album, she actually painted a song, or made a painting to go with each song on his solo record.
Okay.
They're the real cool artistic couple that are being quite creative in these times. It's really interesting to see how many different ideas they're coming up with that seem to be working for them. Last week as well, he released a single that is You and Me, which is the name of the book. That has been added to our playlist as well. I'm not sure if you can purchase that one, but it's available for streaming for sure.
Okay.
And then his album is available for sale over on his website as well. And the other night, a couple nights ago, Tuesday night, they did an isolation bingo, which was quite fun. It was their second one, and they may be doing more. So anyone interested in something like that, keep an eye on them on social media. They basically just did a live stream. They gave out cards ahead of time for anyone that wrote them.
Okay.
And they called out numbers and did performances in between. Mike was with the guitar and singing, and Bruce was on the phone calling out the bingo numbers, and they had their usual stage presence back and forth, which is quite comedic as well.
It's an interesting idea to keep people to stay on the stream for those times.
Yeah, they're very interesting people to watch because they're just funny and witty. They got that Cape Breton humor.
Yeah.
If anyone's interested in a good night in, that is certainly something I would recommend, having experienced it myself. Like I said, that new single, I include it in the playlist. Another very good song from Michael.
Perfect. A non-music related thing coming up at the Spot in Glasgow. Wayne Rushton is really pushing a comedy night thing.
Yeah, I think it's been since COVID he's been doing it, so it's kind of been a start and stop thing because of the same thing with everyone else, where there's a lot of restrictions making it hard for us to try to move forward with some live events.
So he has a comedy night on February 4th at the Spot in Glasgow, and it's just good to see other options out there. Besides music, there is options out there that are starting up and people are kind of getting out there. You don't see a lot of comedy shows in Nova Scotia.
Yeah, exactly. We haven't had something really in Pictou County in the past. So no. Occasional show here and there. I know Glasgow Square would host something here and there too. But it is exciting to see the idea that Wayne might be able to bring some different comedians through Pictou County as well. It's exciting for us.
Yeah, Wayne's doing updates on Instagram on that. His handle is Wayne Rushton Face. So check him out if you want to kind of see what's going on in the comedy scene there.
Tomorrow night, and now by the time anyone listens to this, it will have already happened, but you could probably go back into social media and find this video to rewatch afterwards, a replay video. Elise Aaron from Cape Breton, I believe. She was in a competition that the Collective was in during the pandemic there too, where there was online voting and everything.
Okay.
So that was when I was first became aware of her. But she was actually scheduled to do a New Year's show here in Glasgow, and instead ended up doing an online stream.
Okay.
So that was one of the ones when I said I was toggling between them. I never really went back to mention much about it when we were talking about it because I just toggled back and forth. But I did watch some of the replay as well, and they had a really good setup. The audio is really good for it, and like it was just like you actually felt like you were sitting in the living room watching people have a good old jam. So it was like a small little house party, and they're doing the same thing again tomorrow night. I'll be checking that out. It's billed as Aaron Taylor and Friends live from the living room. And
yes.
we shared a link on our Facebook as well.
Yeah, there probably will be a replay, I'm sure.
Right, yeah, because that New Year's one's still there, so I'm sure they'll do the same thing here.
And on January 29th, the Saturday after this episode comes out, Jake Ballard has an album release party with Dan Vosterman's opening at Bailey's House of Blues and Ribs in Halifax. His album Madness is a folk-driven acoustic album with a blues and rock infusion. So if you're able to get out there, get out and check out Jake Ballard.
That actually kind of reminds me, as far as these shows that are still able to happen with small number of performers and smaller audiences, that band Dasic that we had at one of our previous playlists actually just performed at that Ferkenstein bar that I had mentioned.
Okay, brewery. Yeah.
Yeah, they just played there as well. Another one that we found online when we were looking for ideas here, The Cap in Fredericton is having a show on January 28th with Ice Road Truckers, Iguana, and Voodoo Sometimes. Voodoo Sometimes, don't know if you remember seeing it, but they had some unique posters on the walls back at Music Week.
Mm-hmm.
Voodoo Sometimes is a psychedelic jam band comprised of Matthew Fraser on lead guitar and vocals, Adrian and Roland on bass, and Garrett Jenkins on drums. Their music is fused with high-energy performances, creating a portal straight to the dance floor. Keep a lookout for the release date of their debut album, named after the track Hummingbird's Vice, which is what I threw on our playlist. And this band is based at Halifax, Nova Scotia. And our YouTube playlist actually has a music video to accompany it. They really captured the vibe of the song. It's somebody dancing right off the bat.
Perfect.
It's definitely sets a mood.
You have some news about Shanny 22 as well, eh?
Yeah, that's another one. We keep doing it, but I mean, with a limited amount of things to pull from. Back at Music Week, I briefly met Shanny 22. He and I tried hard to align an interview for those interviews that we did, but the schedules just kept not working out with all the moving pieces. Shortly after that weekend, he was scheduled to go on a tour in the Middle East. As far as I know, he went. I'm not really sure. I'm assuming he did because I saw the other day that he announced his first live show back in Halifax, scheduled for March 18th, and he's bringing a special guest. That's still a ways off, so we'll keep an eye on that, and probably closer to, we'll talk about it again. But with the playlist, I actually added added a newer single that he did with Classified. So that fit in well with the Jody Upshaw stuff. He and the Classified produced those as well.
Perfect. And our playlist, we did discuss having a playlist last time. We're going to do a Spotify playlist and a YouTube playlist for each episode. And we were going to put that out with the episodes, but we decided we're going to put them out the Monday before. So for this episode, it came out a couple days ago. But for the future, people will know that if you go ahead on Monday, you can find our playlist on Spotify and YouTube and listen along. And then when we're talking about the songs that are in our playlist on the episode, you'll have an idea of what we're talking about and kind of elaborating why they're on the playlist.
Yeah, the playlist companions are meant to give you some context around some of the bands. And they're also fun for me to put together because I like to listen to these bands. So one of the things that we talked about before too, the music and talk approach using Anchor and Spotify was preventing us from releasing the full episodes with music to other streaming services, and kind of went with a little bit of a different format so that we're doing playlists to go along with them. And we've been reaching out to artists for individual permissions for the songs that we do incorporate directly into the episode. So we'll continue to do that for now. On the side, one of my little projects that I wanted to try to do, that I mentioned in our intro episode, I'm going to do a couple themed music and talk episodes just to experiment with that technology and see what kind of reach we can get from releasing an episode that way. And anyone that was following us on social media probably saw that I kind of put a call out for information. I'm still collecting information. If anyone has any East Coast bands they would like to share or request for incorporation in one of those. And we're starting, the first one is going to be, I started with metal. I had the theme mining for metal, but the amount of bands that I came across, there's a lot of loud and heavy that splits across many, many genres, and it's hard to just stick to metal. I mean, I could absolutely fill hours and hours of just metal, but there were so many bands that I think I'm just going to stick with the kind of a vibe and that it's a loud and heavy genre instead of one specific genre.
Yeah. Speaking of loud and heavy, brings us to the end of the show. Our sign-off song is going to be from Cluttered. It's called Ativan Love Letter. Cluttered is a Halifax-based, pandemic-born band fronted by Maddie Disgrace on Instagram. And you can also find Cluttered on Instagram, and they have a link tree as well. So Cluttered Band on Linktree, and you can find their links there. And if you're looking for us online, you can also find us on our link tree. It's East Coast DNA on Linktree, and you can find all of our links to all our socials on there as well. But that'll be it for this week. So everyone enjoy the next 2 weeks, and hopefully we have more positive things open news next week than what we have this week.
Yes, and if anyone has any upcoming releases or shows or just some good news they would like to share, some themes or content they would like us to cover, by all means reach out to us. We're easily accessible through all the regular social medias.
And this is Ativan Love Letter by Cluttered.
Bye.